I stare at the invitation on my kitchen counter, the elegant gold lettering mocking me in the afternoon sunlight streaming through my small apartment window. Jessica and David Mitchell request the pleasure of your company at their 5th anniversary celebration. The pleasure of my company? What a joke. My sister Jessica hadn't spoken to me in 3 months, not since the incident at Mom's birthday dinner where I dared to mention my job at Cedar Falls Memorial Hospital in front of her military wife friends. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The invitation arrived yesterday, addressed in my mother's handwriting, not Jessica's. Even this small gesture of inclusion came filtered through someone else. I flipped the card over, searching for any personal note, any sign that my younger sister actually wants me there. Nothing. Just the printed details about cocktails and dinner at the Cedar Falls Community Center, the same venue where we celebrated our high school graduations a decade apart. My phone buzzes against the laminate countertop. A text from Mom appears on the cracked screen of my 3-year-old device. Emma, you're coming Saturday night, right? Jessica is so excited to celebrate with family. The lie sits heavy in the digital text. Jessica hasn't been excited about anything involving me since she married David Mitchell 2 years after their first wedding and fully embraced her role as a distinguished military wife. I pour lukewarm coffee from the pot I made 6 hours ago, before my shift at the hospital laboratory. The bitter liquid matches my mood as I consider my options. Stay home and give Jessica exactly what she wants, my absence from her perfect celebration. Or show up and endure another evening of being introduced as Emma. She works at the hospital while Jessica basks in the respect that comes with being married to a decorated Army officer. The decision shouldn't be this complicated. Family is family, right? But Jessica has made it clear that my presence brings down the social standing she's worked so hard to cultivate in Cedar Falls. My apartment above Murphy's used books doesn't exactly scream success to the wives of Fort Harrison officers. My second-hand clothes from the thrift store on Maple Street don't photograph well next to her designer dresses. My single status at 32 raises uncomfortable questions about my priorities and choices. 3 years ago, when I first moved back to Cedar Falls, Jessica and I grabbed lunch at the Golden Diner like we used to in high school. She peppered me with questions about my plans, my career, my romantic prospects. When I mentioned I was applying for the medical technician position at the hospital, her expression shifted almost imperceptibly. "That's nice," she said, stirring sugar into her coffee. "It's important to have steady work." The dismissal in her tone surprised me then. Now I recognize it as the beginning of a pattern. David joined our family dinners shortly after that lunch. A tall man with precise posture and an easy smile, he charmed my parents immediately. Dad, who'd never served in the military himself, hung on every story about life at Fort Harrison. Mom fussed over David's dietary restrictions and preferences like he was visiting royalty. Jessica glowed beside him, transformed from my sometimes insecure little sister into a confident woman who spoke knowledgeably about military protocols and base politics. I tried to find my place in this new family dynamic. During one dinner, I mentioned a challenging case I'd worked on at the hospital, a complex blood analysis that helped diagnose a rare condition. Dad nodded politely but quickly steered the conversation back to David's recent promotion to staff sergeant. Jessica's eyes glazed over entirely. My professional accomplishments, it seemed, couldn't compete with military achievements. The exclusion became more obvious as Jessica embraced her identity as an Army wife. She joined the family readiness group, volunteered for base fundraisers, and hosted dinner parties for David's colleagues and their spouses. These events, held at their suburban ranch house in Willowbrook subdivision, never included invitations for me. "It's mostly military families," she explained when I asked about one gathering I'd heard about from Mom. "You wouldn't really fit in with the conversation." But it wasn't just social events. Jessica stopped calling to check in, stopped responding to my texts with more than polite acknowledgments. When I suggested we plan a sister's weekend like we used to, she claimed her schedule was packed with military family obligations. The woman who once called me her best friend now treated me like a distant acquaintance, whose presence might embarrass her in front of people who mattered. The breaking point came during Mom's 62nd birthday dinner at Riverside Park. Jessica had organized the celebration, inviting several of her military spouse friends to join our family gathering. I arrived straight from a particularly difficult shift at the hospital, still wearing my scrubs because I hadn't had time to change. Jessica's friend Karen made a comment about how hard it must be to work such physical jobs, with a tone that suggested pity rather than respect. Emma's very dedicated mom jumped in, trying to smooth over the awkward moment. She works so hard at the hospital. In the lab, I clarified, wanting to correct any misunderstanding about my role. I'm a medical technician specializing in hematology and chemistry analysis. Last week I caught a rare blood disorder that 3 doctors had missed. The early detection probably saved the patient's life. The table fell silent. David nodded respectfully, but Jessica's face flushed red. Karen changed the subject to base housing renovations, and the conversation moved on as if I hadn't spoken. Later, as we cleaned up, Jessica pulled me aside with unusual force. "Did you have to make it about you?" she hissed, glancing toward her friends who were chatting with David near the picnic tables. "This was Mom's birthday. Not a chance for you to show off about your job." Show off. The accusation stung. I was just explaining what I do when someone seemed confused. "You always do this, Emma. You have to be the center of attention, make everyone uncomfortable with your intensity." She gestured vaguely at my appearance, my scrubs, my unwashed hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. "Some of us are trying to maintain relationships here." The conversation ended there, but something fundamental shifted between us. Jessica stopped pretending that my exclusion from her life was accidental. She simply stopped trying to include me at all. Now, 3 months later, this anniversary invitation feels like a test. Show up and prove I can behave appropriately in her elevated social circle, or stay away and confirm her narrative that I don't belong in her new life. Either way, I lose. I finish my cold coffee and check the time on the microwave clock. 4:30 on a Thursday afternoon. Jessica's party is Saturday night, less than 48 hours away. I need to make a decision, but more than that, I need to understand how my relationship with my sister deteriorated so completely. We used to share everything, support each other through difficult times, celebrate each other's successes. Now she acts like my very existence is a source of shame. My laptop sits open on the small dining table where I usually eat my solitary meals. On impulse, I navigate to Facebook and scroll through Jessica's recent posts. Her profile is a carefully curated gallery of military wife success. Photos from officer spouse club events, fundraisers for deployed families, charity drives for veteran organizations. She looks radiant in every image, perfectly dressed and styled, surrounded by women who share her elevated social status. I barely appear in her social media presence. When I do, it's in group family photos where I'm positioned on the edges, often partially obscured by other relatives. The contrast between her glowing descriptions of David's military service and her silence about my work is stark. Her husband's achievements warrant detailed posts with hashtags about military pride. My career in medical diagnostics doesn't merit even casual mentions. The laptop screen reflects my tired face, highlighting the dark circles under my eyes from another double shift yesterday. When did I become someone worth hiding? When did my accomplishments become embarrassments? I close the browser and lean back in my second-hand chair, staring at the ceiling of my small apartment. My phone rings, startling me from my brooding. Rachel Barnes' name appears on the display. My college roommate turned successful attorney. She's one of the few people who still calls regularly despite my social isolation. "Emma, how are you holding up?" Rachel's voice carries the warmth that made us instant friends freshman year. I was thinking.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
Thinking about our conversation last week about Jessica, still debating whether to show up to her anniversary party. I admit grateful for someone who remembers what our relationship used to be like. Part of me wants to prove I can fit into her world, but honestly, Rachel, I'm not sure why I should have to. Because you miss your sister, Rachel says gently. But also because something about this whole situation doesn't add up. You've told me how close you two used to be, how proud she was of your achievements in school, your work ethic, your independence. People don't usually change that dramatically without a reason. Maybe the reason is that I'm not good enough for her new life. Or maybe there's something else going on that you're not seeing. Rachel's lawyer instincts have always been sharp. Emma, when exactly did Jessica's attitude toward you change? Can you pinpoint a specific moment? I think back through the timeline of our deteriorating relationship. It started gradually after she married David, but it got worse after I moved back to Cedar Falls. She seemed almost afraid of something, like having me around made her nervous. Afraid of what? I don't know. Maybe that I'd embarrass her in front of the military wives. Maybe that I'd remind people she comes from a working-class family instead of military aristocracy. Rachel is quiet for a moment. Emma, can I ask you something that might sound strange? Have you ever told Jessica about your time before you came back to Cedar Falls? About what you were doing during those years when you two weren't in regular contact? The question catches me off guard. There's not much to tell. I worked, I traveled a little, I figured out what I wanted to do with my life. Why? Because in all the time I've known you, you've been remarkably vague about those years, even with me. And if you're not sharing details with your best friend from college, I'm guessing you haven't shared them with Jessica either. Her observation hits me like a physical blow. She's right. I've carefully avoided discussing certain periods of my past, even with people I trust. The reason seemed obvious to me, but now I wonder if my secrecy has contributed to Jessica's perception that I'm somehow lesser than her husband's military achievements. Maybe you're right, I concede. But Jessica never asked for details. She seemed more interested in dismissing whatever I was doing than learning about it. Or maybe she was picking up on the fact that you weren't being completely open with her. Trust works both ways, Emma. If you want to rebuild this relationship, you might need to start with honesty. After Rachel hangs up, I sit in my quiet apartment as evening shadows lengthen across the hardwood floor. Her words echo in my mind, forcing me to confront an uncomfortable truth. I have been secretive about significant portions of my past. The reasons felt justified, necessary even, but perhaps my silence has been interpreted as evasiveness or shame. The anniversary invitation still sits on my counter waiting for a decision. Saturday night will bring either reconciliation or final separation from my sister. The choice feels enormous, weighted with years of hurt feelings and misunderstandings. I pick up my phone and scroll through my contacts until I find Jessica's number. My thumb hovers over the call button. We haven't had a real conversation in months, just brief exchanges mediated by our parents. Maybe it's time to change that, even if it means risking another painful rejection. Before I can lose my nerve, I press call. The phone rings once, twice, 3 times. I expect voicemail, but Jessica's voice comes through the speaker, cautious and surprised. Emma, is everything okay? Hi Jess, I got your invitation to the anniversary party. A pause. Mom said she'd make sure you received it. I want to come. I want to celebrate with you and David. But I feel like we need to talk first. Really talk. Not just exchange pleasantries at family dinners. Another pause, longer this time. I can hear voices in the background, probably David and some of their military friends. Jessica's new world, the one where I don't quite fit. Emma, I'm actually hosting a dinner party right now. Can we discuss this another time? The dismissal stings, but I push forward. When? When can we discuss it? Because it feels like you've been avoiding me for months and I don't understand why. I haven't been avoiding you. Her tone grows defensive. I've been busy. Military families have a lot of obligations you wouldn't understand. Try me. Help me understand instead of just assuming I won't. The voices in the background grow louder and I hear David calling Jessica's name. "I really can't do this right now," she says hurriedly. "Just come to the party if you want to come. We'll figure everything else out later." The line goes dead. I stare at my phone, frustration and hurt warring in my chest. Even my attempts at direct communication get brushed aside for her military social obligations. Whatever is driving this wedge between us runs deeper than simple sibling rivalry or social climbing. I walk to my bedroom and open the closet, surveying my limited options for Saturday night. A black dress from Target, worn to the last 3 family gatherings. A navy blazer from the thrift store that almost looks professional. Nothing that screams military spouse elegance but respectable enough for a community center celebration. As I lay the dress across my bed, Rachel's words return to me. "Maybe the problem isn't just Jessica's attitude toward me. Maybe I've contributed to this estrangement by keeping parts of myself hidden. By not trusting her with the full truth of who I am and what I've accomplished." Saturday night approaches whether I'm ready or not. The anniversary party will happen with or without me. But for the first time in months I feel a spark of determination to fight for this relationship instead of simply accepting its deterioration. My sister may not want me at her celebration, but I'm going anyway. Not to prove I can fit into her world, but to remind both of us who we used to be to each other. And maybe, if Rachel is right, to finally share the parts of myself I've kept hidden for too long. The invitation catches the last rays of sunlight as I set it next to my car keys. Saturday night will bring answers one way or another. The Cedar Falls Community Center buzzes with elegant conversation as I approach the entrance Saturday evening. Through the tall windows I can see clusters of well-dressed people holding wine glasses, their laughter carrying into the parking lot where I'm trying to summon the courage to walk inside. The building, usually home to church potlucks and town meetings, has been transformed with white linens, soft lighting and floral arrangements that probably cost more than my monthly rent. I adjust my black Target dress one final time and check my reflection in my car's side mirror. The outfit looked acceptable in my apartment's dim lighting, but under the community center's bright exterior lamps, every imperfection seems magnified. The fabric is obviously synthetic, the cut slightly loose in places where it should be fitted. My shoes, comfortable flats from a discount store, lack the elegant heel height favored by the military wives I've observed at family gatherings. But I'm here and that feels like a victory in itself. The drive across town gave me 20 minutes to rehearse potential conversations, to prepare for the careful social navigation that Jessica's events always require. I've decided to follow Rachel's advice and be more open about my past if the opportunity arises. Not everything, but enough honesty to bridge whatever gap has grown between my sister and me. The entrance hallway welcomes me with soft jazz music and the scent of expensive catered food. A guest book sits on a small table decorated with photos from Jessica and David's wedding, their various military events, and carefully curated moments from their 5 years together. I flip through the pages, recognizing signatures from extended family members and names I don't know. Presumably David's military colleagues and their spouses. "Emma, you made it." Mom appears beside me in a navy dress that's obviously new, her hair styled more elaborately than usual. She pulls me into a hug that feels both relieved and worried. "You look lovely, sweetheart. Jessica will be so happy you're here." I doubt Jessica's happiness but smile anyway. The place looks beautiful. She really outdid herself with the decorations. David's mother helped with the planning. Linda has such sophisticated taste. Mom's tone carries the slight awe she's developed when discussing David's family, as if their military connections have elevated them to a social level she's still learning to navigate. "Come, let me introduce you to some people." Before I can object, Mom guides me into the main reception area where about 60 people mingle in small groups. The room showcases the clear social hierarchy of military life. Officers and their spouses occupy the central spaces, their posture confident and voices carrying the easy authority of people accustomed to respect. Lower-ranking enlisted personnel and their families cluster toward the edges, still included but obviously aware of their place in the social order. Jessica stands near the head table with David, resplendent in a wine-colored dress that probably cost more than my car payment. Her hair is professionally styled in an elaborate updo, her makeup flawless, her smile radiant as she accepts congratulations from a group of older women who must be senior officers' wives. This is Jessica in her element. The military wife role she's perfected over 5 years of marriage. David looks impressive in his dress uniform, the array of ribbons and insignia speaking to achievements I don't fully understand but can recognize as significant. He's talking with a group of men whose posture and bearing suggests senior military leadership. Even in this social setting, the deference shown to certain individuals makes their rank obvious. Emma, Aunt Carol spots me first, waving me over to where several family members have gathered. "We weren't sure you'd make it. How's work at the hospital?" "Busy but rewarding," I reply, accepting hugs from Uncle Mark and several cousins I see only at major family events. "The lab has been especially challenging lately with some complex cases." "That must be so interesting," says my cousin Jennifer, who works as a teacher in the next town over. "I always wondered what goes on behind the scenes in medical testing." Before I can elaborate, the conversation shifts as David's father approaches our group. James Mitchell carries himself with the bearing of a career military man, his gray hair cut in a precise style that speaks to decades of regulation grooming standards. Even in civilian clothes, he projects authority and expects attention when he speaks. Family members, good to see everyone celebrating with David and Jessica. His voice carries the clipped precision of someone accustomed to giving orders and having them followed immediately. This is quite a gathering. David has some very distinguished colleagues here tonight. Uncle Mark nods respectfully. "We're proud to be part of the celebration." David's achievements reflect well on the whole family. Indeed, military service teaches values that benefit everyone associated with it. James's gaze sweeps over our group, assessing each of us with the practiced eye of someone who sizes up people for a living. When his attention reaches me, I feel the weight of evaluation. "Emma, isn't it? You work at the local hospital?" "Yes, sir. I'm a medical technician in the laboratory. Civilian medical field. Steady work, good benefits, I'm sure." His tone suggests polite acknowledgement rather than genuine interest. "Important to have reliable employment." The dismissal stings, especially delivered in front of my extended family. I force a smile and nod, unwilling to create tension at Jessica's celebration. But the interaction reinforces everything I've observed about the social dynamics surrounding David's military career. Civilian achievements, no matter how skilled or meaningful, occupy a lower tier in this hierarchy. "Emma's being modest." Jennifer interjects. "Bless her. She was telling us about complex medical cases she's been working on. It sounds fascinating." James nods politely, but his attention has already moved on to Uncle Mark's questions about base operations and military benefits. The conversation flows around military topics that exclude me, not through deliberate intent, but through the natural gravitation towards subjects that interest the majority of participants. I excuse myself to visit the bar, hoping to find a quiet moment to observe the social dynamics before attempting to approach Jessica. The bartender, a young man who clearly works these community center events regularly, pours me a glass of white wine and offers a sympathetic smile. Not much of a military crowd person, he asks quietly, having apparently observed my somewhat awkward navigation of the room. "Just trying to fit in at my sister's celebration, I admit. Different world than I'm used to. I work a lot of these military events. They can be intimidating if you're not part of that culture. Very protocol-oriented, lots of unspoken rules about respect and hierarchy." His observation proves accurate as I watch the party dynamics unfold. Conversations flow along predictable lines, with senior officers holding court while junior personnel wait for appropriate moments to contribute. Spouses mirror their husbands' ranks in subtle but noticeable ways, with colonels' wives commanding more attention and deference than sergeants' wives. Jessica moves through these social layers with practiced ease, her interactions carefully calibrated to show appropriate respect to senior officers while maintaining warm friendliness with peers.
She's mastered the military spouse role completely, transforming from the spontaneous, sometimes rebellious sister I grew up with into someone who understands exactly where she fits in this structured social world. The transformation isn't necessarily negative. Jessica appears confident, respected, secure in her identity and place within this community. But watching her navigate these relationships, I can see how my presence might feel disruptive to the careful balance she's achieved. My civilian background, my lack of understanding about military protocols, my tendency to speak directly about my work without considering social hierarchies, all of these factors could potentially embarrass her in front of people whose opinions matter to her social standing. Emma, there you are. David approaches the bar with a genuine smile that reminds me why my parents were immediately charmed by him. Despite the formal military bearing, he possesses a warmth that makes people feel welcomed and valued. I'm so glad you could make it tonight.
Organizing people and events, I say, remembering Jessica's leadership roles in high school clubs and community theater. It sounds like she's found her calling. David nods enthusiastically. She really has. Military life suits her perfectly. The structure, the sense of purpose, the tight-knit community, it's everything she wanted in life. Something in his phrasing catches my attention. Everything she wanted, as opposed to what she had before. Oh, just civilian life in general. You know how it is, people kind of floating without clear purpose or direction, not really connected to something bigger than themselves. David's tone remains friendly, but his words sting with their casual dismissal of non-military existence. Jessica always said she felt like she was meant for something more meaningful than just regular jobs and ordinary life. The comment lands like a physical blow. Regular jobs and ordinary life. Is that how Jessica has characterized her family's background to David and his military circle? Are my parents' working-class careers and my hospital position embarrassing reminders of the life she's risen above? Before I can respond, a commanding voice cuts through the party chatter. Staff Sergeant Mitchell, could I steal you for a moment? A tall man in an impeccably tailored uniform approaches, his bearing and the deference David immediately shows indicating senior rank. I'd like you to meet Colonel Richardson from the Pentagon. David straightens to attention despite the social setting. Of course, sir. Emma, this is Captain Hayes, my commanding officer. Captain, this is Jessica's sister Emma. Captain Hayes extends his hand in a firm handshake, his eyes sharp and assessing in a way that suggests he's accustomed to evaluating people quickly and accurately. He's probably in his early 40s, with graying temples and the lean build of someone who maintains military fitness standards religiously. His uniform displays an impressive array of ribbons and insignia that speak to extensive combat experience and career achievement. Pleasure to meet you, Emma. David speaks very highly of Jessica's family. His tone is polite but professional, the voice of someone accustomed to social obligations that come with rank. I understand you work in the medical field? Yes, sir. I'm a laboratory technician at Cedar Falls Memorial Hospital. Captain Hayes nods politely, his attention already shifting toward the more important business of introducing David to the Pentagon colonel. But something in his expression changes as he looks at me more closely. A flicker of recognition or confusion that he quickly masks with professional composure. Medical laboratory work, that's valuable civilian service. He pauses, still studying my face with an intensity that makes me uncomfortable. Have we met before? You look familiar. I don't think so, sir. I've never been to Fort Harrison except for a few family events over the years. The captain's frown deepens, but David is already moving toward the waiting colonel, and the moment passes. Captain Hayes offers another polite nod before following his subordinate across the room to make the Pentagon introduction, but the brief exchange leaves me unsettled. Something about Captain Hayes's reaction suggested more than casual social interaction. The way he looked at me felt like recognition rather than polite small talk, as if he knew something about me that I hadn't revealed in our conversation. I finish my wine and decide to attempt approaching Jessica before the evening grows later. She's holding court near the gift table with several military wives, their conversation animated as they discuss upcoming base events and deployment schedules. As I approach, their voices lower slightly, the subtle shift in dynamics that occurs when an outsider joins an established group. Emma, you made it. Jessica's smile is bright but doesn't quite reach her eyes. Ladies, this is my sister Emma. Emma, these are my friends from the Spouse Club, Karen, Michelle, and Susan. The women offer polite greetings, their assessment of my appearance and social value swift and practiced. I can see them cataloging details: my discount store dress, my lack of military spouse jewelry, my obvious unfamiliarity with their social protocols. Not hostile, exactly, but measuring me against their community standards and finding me somewhat lacking. Emma works at the hospital, Jessica continues, her tone carrying the same dismissive note I've come to recognize. She's always been very dedicated to her career. Medical work is so important, says Karen, the same woman who made the pitying comment about physical jobs at Mom's birthday dinner. It must be rewarding to help people, even if it's not as structured as military life. The comparison stings, especially delivered with a smile that suggests sympathetic concern rather than deliberate insult. These women have mastered the art of subtle social hierarchy, making their superiority clear while maintaining plausible deniability about any intent to wound. The work is quite complex, actually, I reply, trying to keep my voice level. Laboratory diagnostics require extensive training and precision. Last month, I identified a rare blood disorder that had been misdiagnosed by multiple physicians. The early detection probably saved the patient's life. Michelle nods politely. That's wonderful. It must be nice to have such a practical career. Practical. Another dismissal disguised as compliment. I glance at Jessica, hoping for some sign of support or pride in my accomplishments, but her expression remains carefully neutral. She's not defending me, but she's also not joining the subtle attacks, just maintaining the social balance that keeps her positioned favorably within this group. The conversation moves on to topics that exclude me: upcoming deployment schedules, base housing policies, family readiness group fundraisers. I listen politely, occasionally asking questions that reveal my ignorance of military protocols and terminology. Each gap in my knowledge reinforces my outsider status and, by extension, Jessica's elevated position as someone who belongs in this world. After 15 minutes of increasingly awkward social navigation, I excuse myself to visit the restroom. The hallway provides blessed quiet after the careful performance required in the main reception area. I lean against the wall for a moment, gathering strength for the remainder of the evening. The restroom door opens and Jessica emerges, having apparently followed me down the hallway. For the first time tonight, we're alone together, away from the social obligations and audience that have shaped every interaction. Thank you for coming, she says, but her tone suggests duty rather than genuine gratitude. I know this isn't really your scene. I came because I wanted to celebrate with you, Jess, because despite everything that's happened between us, you're still my sister. Jessica's careful composure cracks slightly. Everything that's happened? What do you mean by that? The distance between us, the way you've been treating me like an embarrassment, the fact that we barely speak unless Mom forces it. The words come out more emotional than I intended, months of hurt feelings finally finding voice. I haven't been treating you like an embarrassment, but Jessica's defensive tone suggests she knows exactly what I'm talking about. I've just been busy with military life. You don't understand the obligations that come with being an army wife. Then help me understand. Talk to me instead of shutting me out. We used to share everything, Jess. Now I feel like a stranger in my own family. Jessica looks away, her carefully applied makeup unable to hide the stress lines around her eyes. It's complicated, Emma. My life now requires certain standards, social expectations that I have to maintain, standards that I don't meet. That's not what I said, but it's what you meant. The hurt in my voice is unmistakable now. My job isn't good enough. My clothes aren't right. My civilian life makes you look bad in front of your military friends. You're being dramatic, but Jessica's protests lack conviction. It's not about you personally. It's about fitting in with a community that has specific values and expectations. Values that exclude your own sister. Jessica's face flushes. Values that prioritize service to country, sacrifice for something larger than yourself, commitment to duty and honor. Things that civilian life doesn't always understand or appreciate. The accusation hits like a slap. Are you saying I don't understand service or sacrifice? That my work helping diagnose diseases and save lives doesn't count as serving something larger than myself? That's not the same thing, and you know it. How is it not the same thing? Jessica struggles for words, her military wife persona clashing with the sister I used to know. Because it's just a job, Emma. It's not a calling, not a commitment to defend your country and protect American values. It's just practical work. There's that word again, practical. As if dedication to healing and helping others lacks the noble purpose of military service. As if my years of training, my skill at saving lives through accurate diagnosis, my commitment to excellence in medical care somehow falls short of meaningful contribution to society. Just a job, I repeat quietly. Is that really what you think of what I do? Jessica's silence provides the answer. In her world, in the military community she's embraced so completely, civilian careers occupy a lesser tier of respect and recognition. My accomplishments, no matter how skilled or impactful, cannot compete with the honor and prestige of military service. I should get back to the party, she says finally. David's captain wanted to introduce me to some senior officers' wives. She walks away, leaving me alone in the hallway, with the crushing realization that our relationship may be irreparably damaged. The sister who once cheered my academic achievements and career ambitions, now views my life's work as inadequate compared to her husband's military service. I return to the reception, but the remainder of the evening passes in a blur of polite conversations and careful social navigation. The military hierarchy asserts itself in countless subtle ways, making clear that some people matter more than others, some achievements deserve more recognition, some contributions to society merit greater respect. As the party winds down, I say my goodbyes to family members and prepare to leave. The evening that I'd hoped might bridge the gap between Jessica and me has only widened it further. Her new identity as a military wife has apparently required rejecting the family background and civilian values that shaped our childhood. I'm walking toward the exit when Captain Hayes appears beside me, his expression serious and somewhat troubled. Emma, could I speak with you for a moment? Privately, something in his tone suggests this isn't casual social courtesy. I follow him to a quiet corner of the hallway, away from the departing guests and cleanup activity. I've been trying to place where I know you from, he says without preamble. The name Emma Thompson, combined with your appearance, it's been nagging at me all evening. My heart begins to race for reasons I can't immediately identify. I'm sorry, Captain, but I don't think we've met before tonight. No, not met exactly, but I've seen your name and photo in official reports. His eyes narrow as he studies my face. Medical laboratory work isn't your only experience in service fields, is it? The question sends ice through my veins. This is the conversation I've been avoiding for 3 years, the revelation I've carefully hidden from everyone in Cedar Falls, including my family. Captain Hayes has somehow connected me to a past I've worked hard to keep buried. I'm not sure what you're referring to, sir. Emma Thompson, formerly Lieutenant Commander Thompson, United States Navy Medical Corps, deployed to Afghanistan and Iraq between 2018 and 2021, where you served as senior medical officer for a forward operating base in Kandahar province. His voice carries the authority of someone stating facts rather than making inquiries. Unless I'm mistaken, and I rarely am about these things, the words hang between us like an explosive device, waiting to detonate everything I've carefully constructed about my post-military civilian life. Captain Hayes knows exactly who I am, what I've done, what I've accomplished in service to my country. Knowledge that changes everything about this evening, about Jessica's dismissive attitude, about my place within the military community that has excluded me. Commander Thompson, he continues when I remain silent, I think we need to have a longer conversation. The silence stretches between Captain Hayes and me in the community center hallway, as departing guests filter past us toward the exit. My mind races through possible responses, each one feeling inadequate against the weight of his recognition. 3 years of carefully constructed civilian identity crumbles in the face of his military precision and memory for detail. I think there's been some confusion, Captain. I finally manage, my voice steadier than I expected given the panic coursing through my system. I'm just a medical technician at the local hospital. Captain Hayes studies me with the practiced assessment of someone who has spent decades evaluating personnel under pressure. His expression remains professionally neutral, but I can see the certainty in his eyes. He knows exactly who I am, what I've accomplished, and probably why I'm trying to hide it. Commander Thompson, with respect, I've read your service record multiple times over the past 3 years. Your medical innovations in battlefield trauma care saved dozens of lives during your deployment to Kandahar province. Your research on rapid blood loss assessment in combat conditions became standard protocol across all forward operating bases. His voice carries the matter-of-fact tone of someone reciting documented achievements. Unless you have an identical twin who happened to serve in the Navy Medical Corps, I'm quite certain of your identity. The weight of his words settles over me like a physical presence. Someone in this small Ohio town knows the truth about my military service, my rank, my achievements in combat medicine. Someone who understands the value and significance of what I accomplished during those difficult years overseas. Why does it matter? I ask quietly, glancing toward the main reception area, where Jessica is still saying goodbye to her military spouse friends. That was a different life. A different person. I'm civilian now. Because your brother-in-law has been struggling with some complex medical issues related to his own deployment, and your sister has been trying to navigate the military healthcare system without much success. Captain Hayes leans against the wall, his formal bearing softening slightly. David's been too proud to ask for help, and Jessica doesn't understand how the system works well enough to advocate effectively. They could use someone with your expertise and rank recognition. The revelation catches me completely off guard. David has medical issues from his deployment. Jessica has been struggling with military healthcare bureaucracy. Neither of them mentioned any health problems during our limited family interactions, but then again, our conversations rarely moved beyond surface pleasantries. What kind of medical issues? My professional instincts override the personal awkwardness of the situation. Whatever complaints I might have about Jessica's treatment of me, if David is dealing with service-related health problems, my medical background could potentially help. Captain Hayes glances around to ensure our conversation remains private. Traumatic brain injury from an IED explosion 18 months ago, during his deployment to Syria. The symptoms have been getting worse recently, but the VA system is slow to respond, and the base medical facility has limited resources for complex neurological cases. David's been trying to handle it on his own, but Jessica mentioned to my wife that she's scared about his increasing headaches and memory problems. The information reframes everything I've observed about David during recent family gatherings. His occasionally distant expression, moments when he seemed to lose track of conversations, the way Jessica sometimes stepped in to answer questions directed at him. I attributed these behaviors to military formality or social awkwardness, but they could actually indicate serious neurological symptoms. Has he had comprehensive neurological testing, MRI scans, cognitive assessment, blood work to rule out other conditions? I find myself shifting into medical mode despite the complex family dynamics at play. Basic testing at the base clinic, but nothing comprehensive. The wait time for specialist appointments through the VA is 6 months minimum, and David's been reluctant to push for expedited care because he doesn't want to appear weak or unable to handle his responsibilities. This is exactly the kind of situation where my military medical background and understanding of both systems could make a real difference. I know how to navigate VA bureaucracy, which specialists to contact, how to frame medical requests to get faster responses. More importantly, I understand the military culture that might prevent David from seeking appropriate help.
Captain, why are you telling me this? Jessica doesn't even want me at family gatherings, let alone involved in her husband's medical care. Captain Hayes straightened slightly, his expression becoming more formal, because despite what you might think, Jessica talks about you constantly. She's proud of your medical career, worried about your isolation from the family, and confused about why you've never mentioned your military service. She thinks you look down on military life because you've never shown interest in David's career or the base community. The statement hits me like a physical blow. Jessica thinks I look down on military life. She's proud of my medical career. The disconnect between Captain Hayes's description and my lived experience of Jessica's dismissive attitude seems impossible to reconcile. That's not how she acts toward me. She treats my job like it's insignificant compared to military service. Her friends make comments about civilian work being less meaningful than military duty, because she doesn't know you outrank most of the people in that room tonight, including me. Captain Hayes's voice carries a slight smile now. Commander is an O5 pay grade, equivalent to lieutenant colonel in the Army. You've got senior field command experience, combat decorations, and specialized expertise that could benefit this entire military community. But if you're presenting yourself as just another civilian medical worker, how is Jessica supposed to know any of that? The logic of his argument is undeniable, but it raises uncomfortable questions about my own choices over the past 3 years. I deliberately concealed my military background when I moved back to Cedar Falls, wanting to escape the intensity and pressure of Navy life. I took a civilian job, rented a modest apartment, and tried to blend into small-town life, without the weight of rank and responsibility. I wanted a normal civilian life, no more military protocols, no more life and death decisions, no more carrying the responsibility for other people's survival, just quiet work in a hospital lab, where my biggest challenge would be identifying blood disorders. And how's that working out for you? Captain Hayes asks gently, are you happy with your quiet civilian life? The question forces me to confront truths I've been avoiding for months. The isolation, the feeling of being intellectually underutilized, the growing depression that comes from hiding significant parts of my identity and achievements. My civilian life has been peaceful, but it hasn't been fulfilling in the ways I expected. It's been difficult to adjust sometimes, I admit, but that doesn't mean I want to go back to military life. I'm not suggesting you return to active duty. But completely hiding your service record means you're also hiding your capabilities, your achievements, and your potential to help people who need your expertise. Captain Hayes glances toward the reception area, where David and Jessica are still engaged in conversations with departing guests. Your family needs you, Commander, but they don't even know what you have to offer. The weight of his words settles over me as we stand in the quiet hallway. 3 years of careful civilian identity have protected me from the pressures of military life, but they've also prevented me from being truly useful to the people I care about most. Jessica's dismissive attitude toward my career makes more sense if she genuinely believes I'm just another hospital worker with no understanding of military culture or values. If I told Jessica about my service record, about my rank and deployment experience, how do you think she'd react? Captain Hayes considers the question carefully. Honestly, I think she'd be shocked, then hurt that you didn't trust her with the truth, then probably angry that you let her think you didn't understand or value military service. But ultimately, I think she'd be relieved to know her sister isn't the civilian outsider she thought you were. And if she's angry about the deception, then you'll deal with that together, as sisters who finally understand each other better. His expression grows more serious. But Commander, if you're going to reveal your background, you need to do it properly, not just mentioning that you served, but explaining your rank, your specialization, your achievements. Help her understand who you really are. The conversation is interrupted by approaching footsteps. Jessica appears in the hallway, her expression curious as she observes my intense discussion with David's commanding officer. Her elegant anniversary dress and perfect makeup remain flawless, despite the evening's social obligations, but I can see fatigue around her eyes that suggests the constant performance required at these military events takes its toll. Captain Hayes, Thank you so much for coming tonight. David was thrilled to introduce you to Colonel Richardson. Her voice carries the polished gratitude of a military spouse who understands the importance of maintaining positive relationships with her husband's superiors. I hope Emma wasn't boring you with too many questions about hospital work. The casual dismissal of my potential contribution to their conversation stings, but Captain Hearth responds with surprising firmness. Actually, Mrs. Mitchell, Emma and I were discussing some medical matters that might be relevant to David's health concerns. She has more expertise in military medicine than you might realize. Jessica's eyebrows rise slightly. Emma, but she's never worked with military medicine. She's always been in civilian hospitals. I see the moment of decision approaching like a freight train. Captain Hayes has created an opening for honesty, but the choice to walk through it remains mine. 3 years of careful secrecy could end right here in this community center hallway, with my sister learning the truth about my military service in the most awkward possible circumstances. Jessica, there are some things about my background that I haven't shared with the family. My voice sounds strange to my own ears, formal and careful. Things that might change your understanding of my career experience. What kind of things? Jessica's expression shifts from polite curiosity to genuine concern. Emma, you're being weird. What aren't you telling me? Captain Hayes steps back slightly, giving me space for what he clearly recognizes as a family conversation, but remaining close enough to provide support if needed. His presence feels like a safety net as I prepare to reveal the truth I've hidden for 3 years. I didn't work in civilian hospitals before I came back to Cedar Falls. I served in the United States Navy Medical Corps for 8 years, including deployments to Afghanistan and Iraq as a senior medical officer. The words come out in a rush, as if speaking them quickly will somehow soften their impact.
Realization that reframes every interaction we've had since my return to Ohio. Her mouth opens slightly, then closes, as she processes information that contradicts everything she thought she knew about my background. Navy Medical Corps, you were in the military? Her voice carries a note of something approaching betrayal. For 8 years, including combat deployments. Yes, what rank? I glance at Captain Hayes, who nods encouragingly. Lieutenant Commander, naval equivalent of an Army major. You were an officer, a field-grade officer. Jessica's voice rises slightly, drawing curious glances from family members still lingering near the exit. For 8 years you held senior rank in military medicine, and you never told any of us. The hurt in her voice is unmistakable now. Not anger at my deception, but pain at being excluded from such a significant part of my identity. I can see her mentally reviewing our conversations, our family interactions, the moments when she dismissed my civilian career while I remained silent about my military achievements. Why would you hide that from us? From me? Tears gather in her eyes, threatening her carefully applied makeup. Do you know how much I've worried about you not understanding David's career, not fitting in with military families, not appreciating the sacrifices that come with service? I wanted a civilian life. I didn't want to be defined by my military service anymore. But you let me think you were just another civilian who didn't get it. Jessica's voice breaks slightly. You let me worry that you looked down on military service, that you thought David's career was more important than family relationships. You let me defend your civilian status to my friends while feeling embarrassed that my sister didn't understand military culture. The accusation lands with devastating accuracy. By hiding my military background, I had allowed Jessica to construct an entirely false narrative about my relationship to military life and values. Her dismissive comments about civilian careers, her friends' condescending remarks about practical jobs, her apparent shame about my lack of military connection, all of these behaviors were based on fundamentally incorrect information about who I am and what I've accomplished. I'm sorry, I say quietly. I didn't realize how my secrecy was affecting your perception of our relationship. Our relationship. Jessica laughs, but there's no humor in it. Emma, I've spent 3 years trying to bridge the gap between my military life and my civilian family. I thought you resented David's career because it took attention away from your achievements. I thought you avoided military events because you felt out of place. I thought I had to choose between honoring my husband's service and supporting my sister's civilian career. Captain Hayes clears his throat gently. Perhaps this conversation should continue somewhere more private. Jessica wipes her eyes carefully, trying to preserve her makeup while processing the emotional bombshell I've just delivered. David needs to hear this too. He's been worried about you feeling excluded from our military community activities. David was worried about me. Of course he was worried. We both were. Your family, Emma. But you seemed so disconnected from the most important part of our lives. Jessica's voice grows stronger as she moves past the initial shock. How could we include you in military spouse activities if we thought you didn't understand or value military service? The question hangs between us as other family members begin to notice our intense conversation. Mom approaches with concern evident on her face, probably worried that Jessica and I are having another argument at her anniversary celebration. Is everything all right, girls? Mom's voice carries the practiced diplomacy of someone who has mediated family disputes for decades. You both look upset. Jessica glances at me, clearly waiting to see how much of this revelation I'm prepared to share with the rest of the family. The decision feels enormous, weighted with years of secrecy and the potential for complete transformation of family dynamics. Mom, Emma just told me something that changes, well, everything. Jessica's voice wavers between hurt and amazement. She's been hiding major parts of her life from all of us. What kind of parts? Mom's concern deepens as she looks between her daughters, probably fearing some terrible confession or family scandal. Captain Hayes steps forward with military precision. Mrs. Thompson, your daughter Emma is a distinguished veteran of the United States Navy Medical Corps. She served with honor in Afghanistan and Iraq, achieving the rank of lieutenant commander and earning recognition for innovative trauma care procedures that saved numerous lives. Mom's face goes blank with shock. She stares at me as if seeing a stranger, her mouth opening and closing without producing sound. The transformation in her expression mirrors Jessica's earlier reaction, disbelief giving way to confused hurt. Emma, is this true? The weight of 3 years of deception presses down on me as I face my mother's questioning gaze. Behind her I can see Dad approaching with Uncle Mark and Aunt Carol, drawn by the obvious tension in our group. David appears at Jessica's side, his expression shifting from casual concern to sharp attention as he senses the gravity of whatever revelation is unfolding. Yes, Mom, it's true. I served 8 years in the Navy, including combat deployments as a senior medical officer. I should have told everyone when I moved back to Cedar Falls, but I wanted to leave that life behind and start fresh as a civilian. Dad arrives in time to hear my confession, his weathered face registering the same sequence of shock, confusion, and hurt that has characterized everyone's reaction to this news. Emma, you were in the military for 8 years. With combat service. Naval Medical Officer, Captain Hayes clarifies with professional precision. Lieutenant Commander Thompson's service record includes deployment to a forward operating base in Afghanistan, where her trauma care innovations became standard protocol across multiple combat theaters. She's highly decorated for her medical service under fire. The small group of family members absorbs this information with varying degrees of comprehension. Dad, who has always shown deep respect for military service despite never serving himself, looks at me with something approaching awe. Mom appears bewildered, as if trying to reconcile the daughter she thought she knew with this new information about military rank and combat medicine. Uncle Mark whistles softly. Lieutenant Commander, Emma, that's field-grade officer rank. That's a pretty big deal in military hierarchy. It was a different life, I repeat. But the words sound hollow, even to me now. I wanted to put that behind me when I came home. Jessica's eyes flash with renewed hurt. Put it behind you, Emma. You put us behind you. You made us think we weren't worth trusting with the truth about who you are and what you've accomplished. That wasn't my intention, but it was the result. David speaks for the first time since the revelation began, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to analyzing complex situations quickly. Emma, I've been struggling with some medical issues related to my deployment, and Jessica has been trying to help me navigate the VA system without much success. If we had known about your military medical background and rank recognition, we could have asked for your help months ago. The admission that David has been dealing with deployment-related health issues while I remained ignorant and unhelpful adds another layer of guilt to an already overwhelming situation. My decision to hide my military background hasn't just hurt my family's feelings, it has potentially prevented me from helping with serious medical problems. What kind of medical issues? I ask, shifting into the professional mode that has always felt more comfortable than family emotional dynamics, TBI from an IED blast. Increasing headaches, memory problems, difficulty concentrating. The base clinic has been treating it as minor concussion symptoms, but Jessica thinks it's getting worse. My medical training immediately kicks in, recognizing the classic progression of traumatic brain injury symptoms that often worsen over time without proper treatment. This is exactly the kind of case where my military medical experience and understanding of VA bureaucracy could make a significant difference in getting David appropriate care. How long since the initial injury have you had comprehensive neurological testing? MRI with contrast, cognitive function assessment, vestibular evaluation. David's expression lightens as he recognizes someone who understands both his medical condition and the military healthcare system. 18 months since the blast. Basic testing at the base clinic, but nothing comprehensive. They keep saying it's mild TBI that should resolve with time. Mild TBI that hasn't resolved after 18 months isn't mild anymore, I reply with the confidence that comes from treating similar cases in combat settings. You need specialist evaluation, preferably at a VA medical center with dedicated TBI programs. I can help you navigate the referral process and ensure you get expedited appointments. Jessica watches this exchange with growing amazement. You really do understand military medicine. You know how to work within the system. I spent 3 years running medical operations for a forward operating base with limited resources and complex bureaucracy. Navigating military healthcare systems was a daily requirement of my job, and you've been working in a civilian hospital lab while David struggled with getting proper medical care. The accusation in Jessica's voice is unmistakable. You've been letting us think you couldn't help because you didn't understand military culture. The weight of her words forces me to confront the full consequences of my deception. By hiding my military background, I hadn't just protected my own privacy, I had prevented myself from helping my brother-in-law with potentially serious medical problems that fell directly within my area of expertise. I didn't know David was having health issues. No one told me. Because we didn't think you'd understand or be able to help, Jessica replies with devastating logic. Because we thought you were just another civilian who didn't know how military medicine works. Mom finds her voice finally. Emma, why didn't you trust us with this information? We're your family, we would have been proud of your military service, not judgmental. I wanted to leave that identity behind. Military life was intense, demanding, full of life and death responsibilities. I thought civilian life would be simpler, more peaceful. But you didn't leave it behind, Captain Hayes observes quietly. You just buried it, which isn't the same thing. And in burying it, you also buried your ability to help the people who need your expertise most. The truth of his statement settles over our family group like a blanket of uncomfortable realization. My attempt to escape military life by denying its existence has created problems far beyond my own personal adjustment issues. I have inadvertently hurt my sister's feelings, missed opportunities to help David with serious medical problems, and allowed my family to worry unnecessarily about my civilian career and social integration. So what happens now? Aunt Carol asks practically. Now that we know the truth about Emma's background, the question hangs in the air as our small group stands in the community center hallway, processing the revelation that has reframed years of family dynamics and misunderstandings. The anniversary party continues around us, but we have become isolated in our own bubble of family drama and revelation. Jessica looks at me with an expression that combines hurt, amazement, and something that might be cautious hope. Now we figure out how to be sisters again, knowing who we really are instead of who we thought we were. David extends his hand to me with newfound respect. Commander Thompson, thank you for your service. And if you're willing, I'd very much appreciate your help navigating the VA system for my TBI treatment. The formal military greeting feels both familiar and strange after 3 years of civilian life, but as I shake David's hand and accept his thanks for service I had hidden from him, I realize that Captain Hayes was right. Completely denying my military background hasn't brought me the peace I sought. Instead, it has created a different kind of burden, the weight of hiding significant parts of my identity and capabilities from the people who matter most. I'm willing to help, I tell David, and Jessica, I'm sorry for not trusting you with the truth about my background. You deserve to know who your sister really is. As our family group slowly returns to the main reception area to finish the evening's celebration, I catch Captain Hayes's satisfied nod. His recognition of my military identity has catalyzed a family revelation that will require careful navigation in the coming weeks and months. But for the first time in 3 years, I feel the possibility of authentic relationship with Jessica and David, built on truth, rather than partial information and mutual misunderstanding. The anniversary party winds down around us, but the real celebration is just beginning. The celebration of family members finally seeing each other clearly, military service finally receiving appropriate recognition, and hidden expertise finally being available to help the people who need it most. Tomorrow will bring difficult conversations about trust deception and the complex reasons why I chose to hide my military background from the people who loved me. But tonight ends with the promise of authentic relationship, mutual respect, and the opportunity to use my medical expertise to help David get the treatment he needs and deserves. The next morning arrives with the weight of revelation still pressing against my chest as I sit in my small apartment kitchen, staring at a cup of coffee that has grown cold while I replay the previous evening's events. Sunlight filters through my discount store curtains, illuminating the modest space that suddenly feels like a hiding place rather than a home. My phone has been buzzing intermittently since 7 a.m. with text messages from family members, each one carrying questions I'm not sure how to answer. Mom's message arrived first, simple but loaded with confusion and hurt. Emma, we need to talk about last night. I don't understand why you felt you couldn't tell us about your military service. Call me when you're ready. The formal tone, so different from her usual chatty texts about neighborhood gossip or church events, reflects the magnitude of trust that has been shattered by my 3 years of deception. Jessica's message came an hour later, longer and more emotional. I keep thinking about all the times I complained about military life being too complicated for civilians to understand, while you sat there knowing exactly what I was talking about. I feel like an idiot, and hurt. We need to figure out where we go from here. The vulnerability in her written words contrasts sharply with the defensive anger she displayed at the community center, suggesting she's moved past initial shock into the more complex emotions of betrayal and confusion. Dad's text was characteristically direct. Proud of your service, sweetheart. Wish we'd known sooner. Your old man would have liked to brag about having a Navy officer for a daughter. The simple statement carries more emotional weight than lengthy explanations, reminding me of all the conversations where he praised David's military achievements while remaining silent about my own accomplishments, simply because he didn't know they existed. But it's David's message that keeps drawing my attention back to the phone screen. Commander Thompson, thank you for offering to help with my medical situation. Could we meet this week to discuss the VA referral process? I've been dealing with this alone for too long. The formal military address, combined with personal vulnerability, creates exactly the kind of relationship dynamic I had hoped to avoid by hiding my service record. The sound of footsteps on the wooden stairs leading to my apartment interrupts my brooding. A firm knock on the door follows, too early for casual social visits, and too purposeful for delivery services.
I peer through the small window to see Rachel Barnes standing on my narrow landing, holding a cardboard carrier with 2 large coffee cups, and wearing the determined expression she gets when she's decided to intervene in a friend's crisis. "I brought reinforcements," she announces when I open the door, holding up the coffee carrier. "And I'm not leaving until you explain what happened at Jessica's party last night. Your mom called me at 10 p.m., practically in tears, asking if I knew about your secret military career." I step aside to let her into my small living space, grateful for her friendship even as I dread the conversation that's about to unfold. Rachel has been my closest confidant since college, the one person who has consistently pushed me to face difficult truths rather than avoid them. If anyone can help me navigate the mess I've created with my family, it's her. "So it's true," she continues, settling into my second-hand armchair and handing me one of the coffee cups. "You were actually a Navy officer for 8 years, including combat deployments. Lieutenant Commander Naval Medical Corps. 3 deployments to Afghanistan and Iraq between 2018 and 2021. The words come easier now, after last night's forced revelation, but they still feel strange to speak aloud in my civilian apartment." Rachel stares at me with the same expression of shock and hurt that has characterized everyone's reaction to this news. "Emma, I've known you for 12 years, we were roommates in college, maid of honor at each other's hypothetical weddings, shared every major life decision since we were 19. How could you not tell me you were a decorated military officer?" The accusation hits harder coming from Rachel than it did from my family members. She's right about the depth of our friendship and the level of trust we've shared over the years. If I couldn't be honest with Rachel about my military background, the problem goes deeper than simple family dynamics or desire for civilian anonymity. I wanted to leave that identity behind when I moved back to Cedar Falls. Military life was intense, demanding, full of responsibilities I wasn't sure I wanted to carry anymore. I wrap my hands around the coffee cup, seeking warmth against the emotional chill of this conversation. I thought I could just become Emma, the hospital lab tech, living a quiet small-town life, without rank, or protocol, or life-and-death decisions. "But you didn't leave it behind," Rachel replies with the lawyer's precision that makes her so effective in court. "You just buried it, which created a different set of problems. Like letting your sister think you didn't understand military culture while she struggled with her husband's deployment-related medical issues." The reminder of David's TBI situation adds another layer of guilt to my already overwhelming emotional state. Not only have I deceived my family about my background, but my deception has prevented me from helping with medical problems that fall directly within my area of expertise. I didn't know David was having health problems. They never mentioned anything about TBI or VA system difficulties. Because they thought you were just another civilian who wouldn't understand military medicine or be able to help navigate the system. Rachel's voice grows gentler as she recognizes the circular nature of the problem I've created. "Emma, you've trapped yourself in a lie that prevented authentic relationships with the people who matter most to you." The truth of her statement settles over me like a heavy blanket. By hiding my military identity, I hadn't achieved the peaceful civilian life I thought I wanted. Instead, I had created isolation, misunderstanding, and missed opportunities to use my expertise for the benefit of people I care about. So what do I do now? How do I rebuild trust with my family after 3 years of deception? Rachel considers the question while sipping her coffee, her expression thoughtful. "You start by being completely honest about everything. Not just your rank and deployment history, but why you chose to hide it, what you were afraid of, what you hoped to accomplish by maintaining civilian anonymity. And if they can't forgive me for the deception, then you deal with that consequence, but at least you'll be dealing with it honestly, instead of building more lies on top of the existing ones." Rachel leans forward with the intensity she brings to important legal arguments. "Emma, your family loves you. They're hurt right now, but they're also probably relieved to finally understand why you seemed so disconnected from their lives." My phone buzzes with another text message, this one from Captain Hayes. "Commander Thompson, I've spoken with David about his medical situation. Would you be willing to meet at Fort Harrison this week to discuss VA referral strategies? Your expertise could make a significant difference in getting him appropriate care. The formal military communication feels both familiar and foreign after 3 years of civilian life, but it also represents an opportunity to use my medical background constructively to help David navigate a system I understand better than most civilian healthcare providers. Rachel, David's commanding officer, wants me to come to Fort Harrison to help with his medical case. That means going back onto a military base, dealing with military personnel, potentially having to explain my civilian status to people who knew me as an active duty officer. And that scares you. It means acknowledging that I can't completely separate my military identity from my civilian life, that the skills and knowledge I gained during 8 years of service are part of who I am, whether I want them to be or not. Rachel nods thoughtfully. Maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe trying to completely reinvent yourself as someone without military experience was unrealistic from the beginning. The suggestion forces me to confront assumptions I've held since leaving active duty. I had believed that successful transition to civilian life required leaving military identity behind entirely, becoming someone new, rather than integrating military experience with civilian goals. But perhaps the integration approach would have been healthier than the complete denial I've practiced for 3 years. I need to call Jessica back, and David, and probably Captain Hayes. The list of difficult conversations feels overwhelming, but necessary for any hope of rebuilding authentic relationships with my family. Do you want me to stay while you make those calls? Moral support. Actually, I think I need to have these conversations alone. But thank you for coming over, for being honest about how my secrecy has affected our friendship too. Rachel gathers her coffee cup and jacket, but pauses at the door. Emma, for what it's worth, I think you're brave for serving your country in combat zones, and I think you're brave for choosing to be honest now, even though it's complicated and messy. Don't let fear of difficult conversations prevent you from rebuilding these relationships. After she leaves, I sit in my quiet apartment and consider the phone calls that need to be made. Jessica deserves a fuller explanation than the brief revelation at her anniversary party. David needs information about VA procedures and specialist referrals. Captain Hayes requires confirmation about my willingness to consult on David's case. But first, I need to call Mom and Dad. They've been the most understanding about my military service revelation, but they also deserve to understand why I chose to hide such a significant part of my life from them. Mom answers on the second ring, her voice carrying the careful tone she uses when she's upset, but trying not to show it. Emma, sweetheart, how are you doing after last night? Confused, guilty, and realizing I've made some poor choices about honesty with the
People I love most. The admission comes easier than expected, perhaps because Mom's voice carries unconditional love despite her obvious hurt feelings. Can you help me understand why you felt you couldn't tell us about your military service? We've always been proud of your achievements, supportive of your career choices. Did you think we'd disapprove of military service? The question cuts to the heart of my decision-making process 3 years ago. No, Mom, I knew you'd be proud and supportive. I was trying to protect myself from the intensity of military identity, not protect you from knowledge about my background. Protect yourself how? Military life was demanding in ways that were hard to explain to civilians. Life and death medical decisions, responsibility for other people's survival, constant pressure to perform perfectly under terrible conditions. When I came home, I wanted to be just Emma from Cedar Falls, working a normal job and living a quiet life. Mom's silence stretches long enough that I begin to worry the call has been dropped. When she speaks again, her voice carries the wisdom that comes from raising children through various crises. Sweetheart, you can't separate yourself from your own accomplishments and experiences. They're part of who you are, part of what makes you capable and strong and valuable to the people around you. But they also made me feel isolated from civilian life, like I couldn't relate to normal problems and normal relationships after what I'd seen and done overseas. So instead of trying to bridge that gap, you just pretended the military experience never happened? The question hangs between us, highlighting the flawed logic that has governed my post-military life choices. I had assumed that successful civilian transition required abandoning military identity entirely, but perhaps the opposite was true. Perhaps authentic civilian life required integrating military experience rather than denying it. I think I made some mistakes in how I approached coming home. We all make mistakes, Emma. The important thing is recognizing them and figuring out how to move forward. Mom's voice grows warmer, more familiar. Your father and I want to understand your military service better. We want to know about your deployments, your medical work, the achievements that we should have been celebrating for the past 3 years. The offer of genuine interest and support nearly brings me to tears. I'd like that, Mom. I've missed being able to share important parts of my life with family. And Jessica needs to hear from you too. She's confused and hurt, but she loves you. She wants to understand why you let her think you didn't appreciate military life while she was struggling to help David with his health problems. The reminder of David's TBI situation refocuses my attention on immediate practical concerns. Mom, I need to help David navigate the VA system for his traumatic brain injury treatment. My military medical background gives me expertise that could make a real difference in getting him appropriate care. Then do that, sweetheart. Use your skills to help your family. That's what we do for each other.
Medical mode. 18 months ago, IED blast during a convoy operation in Syria. Initial treatment at the field hospital, then basic evaluation at the base clinic when he returned stateside. They classified it as mild TBI and said the symptoms should resolve with time. What symptoms is he experiencing now? Headaches that are getting worse and more frequent, memory problems, especially with recent events, difficulty concentrating during work tasks. Sometimes he seems confused about where he is or what he's supposed to be doing. Jessica's voice wavers as she describes David's condition. I'm scared, Emma. These symptoms seem to be getting worse, not better. My medical training immediately recognizes the progression of symptoms that indicates David's TBI is more serious than the initial classification suggested. Mild traumatic brain injury that hasn't resolved after 18 months often indicates more complex neurological damage that requires specialist intervention. He needs comprehensive neurological evaluation at a VA medical center with dedicated TBI programs. The base clinic isn't equipped to handle complex traumatic brain injury cases. I pull out my phone and begin making notes. I can help you navigate the referral process, contact the right specialists, and ensure he gets expedited appointments. You can really do that? You know how to work within the VA system? I spent 3 years managing medical operations for a forward operating base, where TBI cases were common. I know which doctors to contact, how to frame medical requests for faster responses, and what documentation will get David moved to the front of waiting lists. The confidence in my voice reflects the expertise I've been hiding for 3 years, knowledge that could have been helping David months ago if I had been honest about my background. Jessica stares at me with an expression that combines amazement and frustration. You've had this expertise all along while we've been struggling to get David appropriate medical care? Well, I've been worried sick about his symptoms getting worse. I'm sorry, I didn't know about his health problems because I didn't know to ask, and you didn't know to tell me because you thought I wouldn't understand or be able to help. It's like we've been living in parallel universes, Jessica says quietly. Me trying to be the perfect military wife while worrying about my civilian sister's lack of understanding. You trying to be the perfect civilian while hiding expertise that could have helped us both. The analogy captures the absurdity of our situation perfectly. We have spent 3 years creating and maintaining false narratives about each other, causing unnecessary stress and missed opportunities for mutual support. So what do we do now, I ask? How do we move forward from here? Jessica considers the question while studying the military family photos that line her kitchen. We start being honest with each other, completely honest, about everything. No more hiding, no more assumptions, no more trying to protect each other from truths we think might be uncomfortable. And David's medical situation. You help us get him the care he needs, using your military medical expertise and system knowledge. Then we figure out how to be a family again. knowing who we really are instead of who we thought we were. The conversation continues for another hour as Jessica and I begin the complex process of rebuilding our relationship on a foundation of truth rather than mutual deception. We discuss David's medical needs, my reasons for hiding my military background, and the family dynamics that led to our mutual misunderstanding. By the time I leave Jessica's house, we have developed a plan for addressing David's TBI treatment and begun the emotional work of repairing our sisterly relationship. The road ahead will require more difficult conversations, medical appointments, and family discussions about trust and honesty. But for the first time in 3 years, I feel the possibility of authentic relationship with my sister and brother-in-law. The possibility of using my medical expertise to help people I care about, rather than hiding it in service of a civilian identity that never felt completely genuine. That afternoon, I make 2 more phone calls that will determine the next phase of this unexpected transformation. First, I call Captain Hayes to confirm my willingness to consult on David's medical case and arrange a meeting at Fort Harrison. Second, I call the VA Medical Center in Cincinnati to begin the referral process for David's comprehensive neurological evaluation. Both conversations require me to identify myself as Lieutenant Commander Thompson, Naval Medical Corps, retired. The words feel both familiar and strange, like putting on a uniform that still fits but hasn't been worn in years. As evening approaches, I sit in my apartment and reflect on the events of the past 24 hours. A simple anniversary party has become a catalyst for family revelation, medical intervention, and personal identity integration that I never anticipated. Tomorrow will bring new challenges as I navigate the delicate balance between civilian life and military expertise, between personal privacy and family transparency. But tonight ends with the promise of authentic relationships, appropriate medical care for David, and the opportunity to finally use my medical military background in service of people I care about, rather than hiding it in service of a civilian identity that never felt completely genuine. 3 weeks later, I stand outside the medical building at Fort Harrison, adjusting my civilian blazer, while soldiers in uniform walk past with the purposeful stride that once characterized my own daily routine. The military base feels both foreign and familiar, like returning to a childhood home that has been redecorated but retains the essential architecture of memory. My visitor's pass hangs from a lanyard around my neck, a visible reminder that I now occupy the space between military and civilian worlds. Captain Hayes had arranged this meeting after David's initial consultation with the VA neurologist, confirmed what my medical assessment had predicted. The traumatic brain injury was far more complex than originally diagnosed, requiring immediate intervention and potentially long-term specialized care. David's symptoms had been progressively worsening because the base clinic lacked the resources and expertise to properly evaluate and treat moderate to severe TBI cases. The neurologist's report, which I had reviewed the previous evening, painted a sobering picture of David's condition: chronic post-concussive syndrome with cognitive impairment, vestibular dysfunction, and chronic pain syndrome, secondary to the original blast injury. Without proper treatment, these symptoms would likely continue deteriorating, potentially ending David's military career and significantly impacting his quality of life. But the report also contained hopeful elements. With appropriate treatment at a specialized TBI clinic, including cognitive rehabilitation therapy, vestibular training, and targeted medication management, David had an excellent prognosis for significant improvement. The key was getting him enrolled in the right programs quickly before further deterioration occurred. My role in securing this comprehensive evaluation had been crucial but complicated. When I called the VA Medical Center in Cincinnati, identifying myself as Lieutenant Commander Thompson, requesting expedited evaluation for a fellow service member, the response was immediate and professional. Military medical personnel understand the importance of rank and combat experience when evaluating requests for specialized care. But the conversation also required explaining my current civilian status, my relationship to the patient, and my willingness to serve as a medical advocate throughout David's treatment process. The VA system is designed to serve veterans and active duty personnel, not their civilian family members, regardless of those family members' military backgrounds. Commander Thompson, thank you for coming in today. Captain Hayes emerges from the medical building, extending his hand in the firm military greeting that has become natural again after 3 weeks of renewed military interaction. Colonel Martinez wants to meet with you before we discuss David's ongoing treatment plan. Colonel Martinez, the base medical commander, represents a level of military authority I haven't interacted with since my own active duty service. Our meeting will determine not only David's access to additional medical resources, but also my own relationship with the military medical community that once defined my professional identity. The colonel's office reflects the sparse functionality that characterizes military leadership spaces. Awards and commendations line one wall, operational maps cover another, and his desk displays the organized efficiency of someone accustomed to making rapid decisions under pressure. Colonel Martinez himself appears to be in his late 40s, with the lean build and alert bearing of a career military officer who has maintained combat readiness throughout his service. Lieutenant Commander Thompson, please sit down. His voice carries the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed immediately, but also the courtesy that senior officers show to fellow military professionals. Captain Hayes has briefed me on your background and your involvement in Staff Sergeant Mitchell's medical case. Thank you for meeting with me, Colonel. I understand David's situation has become quite complex. Indeed it has. His TBI case requires resources that exceed our base clinic capabilities, but his active duty status complicates his access to specialized VA programs. Colonel Martinez opens a file on his desk, revealing David's medical records and treatment history. Your intervention was instrumental in getting him proper evaluation, but ongoing treatment coordination will require continued advocacy from someone who understands both military and VA medical systems. The implication hangs between us like an unspoken question. Is I willing to serve as David's long-term medical advocate, navigating between military and civilian healthcare systems to ensure he receives appropriate care? The role would require ongoing involvement with military medical personnel, regular communication with VA specialists, and potentially testifying on David's behalf if his case requires review for medical retirement or disability benefits. Colonel, I'm committed to helping David get the medical care he needs, but I want to be clear about my current status. I'm a civilian now, working in a hospital laboratory. I'm not seeking to return to active duty or resume military medical practice. Understood, Commander, but your military medical background and understanding of TBI treatment protocols make you uniquely qualified to serve as David's patient advocate. This wouldn't require resuming military status, but it would involve ongoing interaction with military medical personnel and VA specialists. Captain Hayes leans forward slightly. Commander, we've also had inquiries from other base families about TBI advocacy services. Your success with David's case has generated interest from spouses and family members who are struggling with similar VA navigation challenges. The suggestion catches me off guard. Not only am I being asked to continue advocating for David, but potentially to help other military families navigate the complex intersection of military and VA medical systems. The role would represent a formal acknowledgement of my military medical expertise while allowing me to maintain civilian status. How many other families are dealing with similar issues? At least 6 that we know of currently, probably more who haven't sought help yet. Colonel Martinez consults another file. TBI cases from Iraq and Afghanistan deployments, complicated by delayed diagnosis, inadequate initial treatment, and bureaucratic delays in accessing appropriate specialists. The scope of the problem becomes clear as we discussed the specific cases. Military families struggling with complex medical conditions, VA bureaucracy that moves slowly despite urgent medical needs, and base medical facilities that lack resources for specialized care. Each case represents a service member and family dealing with challenges I understand intimately from both medical and personal perspectives. What exactly would this advocacy role involve? Case review and assessment, communication with VA specialists, assistance with medical appeals when necessary, and education for military families about navigating both systems effectively. Colonel Martinez's tone becomes more informal as he shifts from official briefing to genuine consultation.
Essentially, you'd serve as a bridge between military families and civilian medical resources, using your expertise to ensure service members get appropriate care. The opportunity represents exactly the kind of meaningful work I had hoped to find when I left active duty, using my military medical background to help people, but without the intensity and pressure of combat medicine or the bureaucratic constraints of active duty service. A chance to integrate my military expertise with civilian life in ways that benefit both communities. I'd be interested in exploring this further, but I'd need to understand the time commitment and how it would interface with my current civilian job. Part-time consulting basis, flexible schedule, compensation through a VA contract for patient advocacy services. Captain Hayes provides the practical details with military efficiency.
Maintain your civilian employment while providing specialized consultation for complex military medical cases. Before I can respond, my phone buzzes with a text message from Jessica. David's appointment went really well. The specialist thinks he'll make significant improvement with proper treatment. Thank you for making this possible. The message reminds me of the personal stakes involved in this decision, the family relationships that have been strengthened through honest communication about my military background. I'd like to accept the advocacy position, Colonel, with the understanding that David's case remains my primary focus and other cases would be secondary responsibilities. Excellent. Captain Hayes will coordinate the paperwork and introduce you to the other families who could benefit from your assistance. Colonel Martinez stands, signaling the conclusion of our meeting. Commander, your willingness to continue serving military families, even in civilian capacity, reflects the best traditions of military medicine. The formal military praise feels both familiar and strange after 3 years of civilian anonymity. But unlike my previous attempts to escape military identity entirely, this acknowledgement feels appropriate and earned rather than burdensome. After leaving the colonel's office, Captain Hayes and I walk across the base toward the Family Services building where David and Jessica are waiting to discuss his ongoing treatment plan. The afternoon sun illuminates the organized activity of military life, soldiers and civilians working together in the structured environment that once defined my daily existence. Commander, can I ask you something personal? Captain Hayes' tone shifts to genuine curiosity rather than official business. Why did you choose to hide your military background when you moved back to Cedar Falls? Most veterans are proud to maintain connection with military communities. The question forces me to articulate thoughts I've been processing over the past 3 weeks of renewed military interaction. I thought civilian life would be simpler and more peaceful if I completely left military identity behind. I was tired of the intensity, the responsibility, the constant pressure of military medicine. And how did that work out? It created different problems: isolation, misunderstanding with family members, missed opportunities to help people who needed my expertise. I pause as we approach the Family Services building. I realize now that trying to completely separate from military experience was unrealistic and ultimately counterproductive. Military service changes you in ways that can't be undone, only integrated into whatever life you build afterward. His observation captures something I've been learning through recent weeks of family conversations and renewed military interaction. My combat medical experience, leadership training, and understanding of military culture aren't burdens to escape, but rather capabilities that can benefit civilian communities when applied appropriately. Inside the Family Services building, David and Jessica wait in a small conference room with chairs arranged around a table covered with medical reports, treatment plans, and appointment schedules. David looks more alert and hopeful than I've seen him in months, while Jessica appears relieved, but still worried about the complexity of his ongoing treatment requirements. Emma, the neurologist, says David should see significant improvement over the next 6 months with proper treatment. Jessica's voice carries excitement mixed with concern about managing the intensive therapy schedule. But the treatment plan is incredibly complex, with appointments at 3 different facilities and coordination between multiple specialists. That's where my advocacy role becomes important, I explain, taking a seat at the table and reviewing the treatment documentation. I'll help coordinate between the VA specialists, military medical personnel, and civilian providers to ensure everything stays on track. David extends his hand across the table with renewed respect and gratitude. Commander Thompson, I can't thank you enough for everything you've done to get me proper medical care. Without your intervention, I'd still be dealing with base clinic personnel who didn't understand the complexity of my condition. The formal military address feels natural now, representing appropriate recognition of my medical expertise and military background rather than an unwanted reminder of a life I was trying to escape. David's gratitude reflects the satisfaction that comes from using professional skills to help people with genuine need. David, you don't need to thank me. This is what military families do for each other. We take care of our own. The words emerge with conviction I haven't felt in 3 years, reflecting a renewed sense of purpose and community connection. Jessica reaches across the table to squeeze my hand. Emma, I'm sorry it took us so long to understand who you really are and what you're capable of contributing to our family. I spent 3 years worrying about things that weren't actually problems while missing opportunities to appreciate your real accomplishments. We both made assumptions about each other that prevented authentic relationship. The important thing is that we're moving forward with honesty instead of mutual misunderstanding. Over the next hour, we review David's treatment plan in detail, discussing appointment schedules, therapy requirements, medication management, and progress evaluation criteria. My military medical background allows me to ask informed questions about treatment protocols, identify potential complications, and suggest coordination strategies that will maximize his chances for successful recovery. The conversation also includes practical discussion about David's military career prospects. Depending on his response to treatment, he may be able to return to full duty, require limited duty assignment, or face medical retirement. Each possibility requires different preparation and advocacy, including potential disability benefits applications and transition planning. The good news is that his prognosis for significant improvement is excellent with proper treatment. I explain, reviewing the neurologist's assessment. The challenging part will be maintaining coordination between multiple providers and ensuring he doesn't fall through bureaucratic cracks during the treatment process. Becomes more serious as she glances at David. We want to host a family dinner this weekend to properly celebrate your military service. Mom and Dad, the aunts and uncles, everyone who should have been honoring your achievements for the past 3 years. The suggestion both touches and intimidates me. A family celebration of my military service would represent complete integration of my military identity with civilian family relationships, acknowledging achievements that had been hidden for 3 years while demonstrating family pride in my accomplishments. Jessica, you don't need to make a big production out of this. The important thing is that we understand each other better now. Emma, you earned recognition for distinguished military service, including combat medical achievements that saved lives under fire. Our family should have been celebrating those accomplishments all along. David's voice carries the conviction of someone who understands the significance of military decorations and combat service. You deserve proper recognition from the people who love you most. The prospect of family celebration focused on my military achievements feels overwhelming after 3 years of hiding that identity. But it also represents the kind of authentic relationship and mutual recognition I had been missing during my attempts at complete civilian anonymity. All right, but nothing too elaborate. Just family dinner with honest conversation about military service and how it fits into my civilian life now. Perfect! And Emma, thank you again for everything you've done for David and for our family. Having you back in our lives, knowing who you really are, it feels like getting my sister back after years of not really understanding each other. 2 days later, I arrive at my parents' house for the family dinner Jessica organized to celebrate my military service. The familiar surroundings feel different now, weighted with the anticipation of conversations about achievements and experiences I've kept hidden for 3 years. My navy dress uniform hangs in the closet of my childhood bedroom, brought out of storage for the first time since my retirement ceremony. Mom greets me at the door with a hug that feels more emotional than usual. Emma, sweetheart, I'm so proud of you. I wish we had known about your military service sooner, but I'm grateful we know now.
The dining room has been set with the good china normally reserved for Christmas and Easter, and Dad has prepared his famous barbecue in honor of what he's calling our family's military hero. The formality feels both touching and slightly overwhelming, representing recognition I had deliberately avoided seeking during my transition to civilian life. Extended family members arrive throughout the afternoon, each one expressing amazement about my military background and pride in achievements they never knew existed. Uncle Mark brings a bottle of wine specifically chosen to honor Navy service, while Aunt Carol presents me with a framed American flag that belonged to her father, my grandfather, who served in World War II. Emma, I had no idea you were carrying on the family military tradition, Aunt Carol says as she presents the flag. Grandpa would have been so proud to know his granddaughter served with distinction in combat zones. The connection to family military history adds another layer of meaning to the evening's celebration. Rather than being an isolated individual trying to escape military identity, I'm part of a generational tradition of service that deserves recognition and integration with family heritage. When Jessica and David arrive, David is wearing his dress uniform, creating a visual reminder of our shared military identity and mutual respect. The sight of us both in uniform, representing different branches but common service, symbolizes the authentic relationship we've built through honest communication about our military experiences. Before we eat, I'd like to say something, Dad announces, raising his glass in a toast position. 3 years ago, Emma came home from what we thought was just travel and career exploration. We're proud of the work she's been doing at the hospital, but now we know that was just part of her story. The room falls quiet as family members focus their attention on Dad's words. Emma served 8 years as a Navy officer, including combat deployments to Afghanistan and Iraq, where she provided medical care under fire and developed innovations that saved countless lives. She achieved the rank of lieutenant commander and earned decorations for valor and medical excellence. The pride in Dad's voice brings tears to my eyes. This is the recognition I had been afraid to seek, worried that family members wouldn't understand the significance of military service or would be overwhelmed by the intensity of combat medical work. We should have been celebrating these achievements for the past 3 years, but we're celebrating them now. To Emma, our family's military hero, and to all the service members whose lives were saved by her medical expertise. The toast is echoed around the room as family members raise their glasses in recognition of military service they never knew existed. The moment represents complete integration of my military identity with family relationships, acknowledging achievements while demonstrating unconditional family support. During dinner, conversation flows naturally between military experiences and civilian life, with family members asking informed questions about deployment challenges, medical innovations, and the transition to civilian career. Rather than feeling overwhelmed by military focus, I experience the relief that comes from authentic communication about significant life experiences. David contributes his own perspective on military medical care, describing how my advocacy had transformed his treatment process and given him hope for full recovery. His testimony reinforces the value of maintaining military medical expertise even in civilian life, demonstrating how those skills can benefit military families who need specialized advocacy. Emma's intervention probably saved my career and definitely improved my quality of life. Without her understanding of military and VA medical systems, I'd still be struggling with inadequate treatment and worsening symptoms. Jessica adds her own perspective on how my honesty about military background had strengthened our sisterly relationship. I spent 3 years thinking Emma didn't understand or value military life, while she was actually hiding expertise that could have been helping military families all along. Now we finally have the authentic relationship we both wanted but couldn't achieve through mutual misunderstanding. As the evening progresses, family members share their own thoughts about military service, civilian careers, and the importance of honesty in family relationships. The conversation reinforces
themes of integration rather than separation, suggesting that military experience enhances rather than complicates civilian life when approached with appropriate support and understanding. Mom presents me with a scrapbook she had prepared over the past week, containing family military history, photos from my own service that she had requested from my apartment, and newspaper clippings about military medical innovations. "I want you to have something that shows how your service fits into our family's story," she explains. "Military service is something to be proud of and remembered, not hidden." The gift represents exactly the kind of family recognition and integration I had been afraid to seek, but needed for complete civilian transition. Rather than treating military service as a separate identity to be abandoned, my family is helping me understand it as part of a continuing story that includes both military achievements and civilian contributions. Near the end of the evening, Captain Hayes calls to discuss another military family that could benefit from my patient advocacy services. The timing feels symbolic, representing the ongoing integration of military expertise with civilian life that will characterize my future, rather than the complete separation I had attempted for 3 years. "Commander Thompson, I hope I'm not interrupting family time, but we have an urgent TBI case that requires immediate advocacy assistance. Would you be available to consult tomorrow morning?" "Of course, Captain. I'll be available whenever the family needs assistance." The response comes naturally now, reflecting a renewed sense of military medical purpose combined with civilian flexibility. After ending the call, I explained to my family about the patient advocacy role I've accepted, which allows me to use military medical expertise to help military families while maintaining civilian employment and lifestyle. The arrangement represents exactly the kind of integration I had been seeking, using military background constructively without resuming the intensity of active duty service. "That sounds like the perfect way to use your military experience to help people," Mom observes. "You get to maintain your civilian life while still serving military families who need your expertise." The evening concludes with family members expressing continued pride in my military service and support for my decision to integrate military expertise with civilian life rather than hiding it entirely. Their understanding and encouragement reinforces the value of honesty about significant life experiences, even when those experiences feel complex or potentially overwhelming. As I drive home to my apartment, I reflect on the transformation that has occurred over the past month. A simple anniversary party has become a catalyst for family reconciliation, medical advocacy, and personal identity integration that I never anticipated. The process has been emotionally challenging but ultimately more satisfying than the civilian anonymity I had been maintaining. My phone contains several text messages from military families requesting advocacy assistance, VA specialists confirming appointment schedules for David's ongoing treatment, and family members sharing photos from tonight's celebration. The messages represent the complex but authentic life I'm building, integrating military medical expertise with civilian relationships and community service. Tomorrow will bring new challenges as I navigate patient advocacy responsibilities, maintain civilian employment, and continue building authentic family relationships based on complete honesty about my background and capabilities. But tonight ends with the satisfaction that comes from finally using military medical expertise to help people who need it most, while receiving family recognition for achievements that deserved celebration years ago. The deception that characterized 3 years of my civilian life has been replaced by integration, honesty, and purposeful service that benefits both military and civilian communities. The process has been complicated and emotionally difficult, but ultimately it represents the kind of authentic life that actually leads to peace rather than simply hiding from complexity. 6 months later, I stand in the Cedar Falls Community Center at a ceremony honoring local veterans, wearing my dress uniform while presenting patient advocacy resources to military families throughout Southern Ohio. David stands beside me in his own dress uniform, fully recovered from his TBI and serving as a testament to the importance of proper medical advocacy for service members dealing with complex health conditions. The community center that once hosted Jessica's anniversary party now serves as headquarters for the military family advocacy program we've developed together. Local civilians, active duty personnel, and veterans work together to ensure military families receive appropriate medical care, educational support, and community resources. Jessica introduces me to the assembled crowd with pride and accuracy that was impossible during our years of mutual misunderstanding. My sister, Lieutenant Commander Emma Thompson, distinguished Navy medical officer and current patient advocate for military families dealing with complex medical conditions. The introduction represents complete family integration of my military identity with civilian life, acknowledging achievements while demonstrating how military expertise can benefit entire communities when applied constructively
rather than hidden defensively. As I address the gathered military families about available advocacy resources, I see reflected in their faces the same struggles David experienced, the same isolation Jessica felt, and the same desire for authentic community support that I had been seeking through 3 years of civilian anonymity. The work is challenging, requiring constant navigation between military and civilian systems, but it represents exactly the kind of meaningful service I had hoped to find when I left active duty. Using military medical expertise to help people, building authentic family relationships, and contributing to community well-being in ways that integrate rather than separate different aspects of my identity and experience. The program has expanded beyond TBI advocacy to include educational support for military children, employment assistance for military spouses, and community integration resources for transitioning veterans. Each service represents an opportunity to use military background constructively while maintaining civilian flexibility and community connections. After the ceremony concludes, Jessica and I stand together looking at the displays of military family resources, community support programs, and advocacy success stories that fill the community center. The transformation from anniversary party location to military family resource center symbolizes the broader changes that have occurred in our family, relationships, and community involvement. Emma, remember when you thought hiding your military background would give you a peaceful civilian life? Jessica asks with gentle humor. How's this working out instead? The question makes me laugh as I consider the complexity of my current life compared to the quiet hospital laboratory work I had been seeking 3 years ago. Patient advocacy responsibilities, family celebrations of military service, community presentations, ongoing education about military medical systems, and civilian employment that now includes military consultation work. It's more complicated than what I thought I wanted, but much more satisfying than what I was actually getting, I admit. Turns out authentic life is messier, but better than carefully constructed anonymity. And our family is stronger because we finally know who we really are instead of who we thought we were. The observation captures the essential transformation that has occurred through honest communication about military backgrounds, civilian aspirations, and family relationships. Rather than trying to protect each other from potentially uncomfortable truths, we've learned to build authentic relationships that integrate all aspects of our identities and experiences. As evening approaches and families begin leaving the community center, David approaches with updates about his continued medical progress and plans for career development that incorporates his TBI experience into advocacy work for other service members. His recovery has been complete enough to allow return to full duty, but his experience with complex medical advocacy has inspired him to pursue additional training in military family support services. Commander Thompson, I've been accepted into the Army's Family Advocacy Specialist program. Your example of using military medical expertise to help military families influenced my decision to pursue this career path. David's gratitude extends beyond personal medical care to professional inspiration for continued service. The ripple effects of honest communication about military backgrounds continue expanding through our family and community, creating opportunities for service, relationship building, and community improvement that were impossible when military experience remained hidden. Tonight, I return to my apartment with a sense of completion about the integration process that began with Captain Hayes' recognition at Jessica's anniversary party. Military medical expertise, civilian community involvement, authentic family relationships, and purposeful service have combined into a life that is complex but genuinely satisfying in ways that civilian anonymity never achieved. The photographs from tonight's ceremony show me in dress uniform, surrounded by military families, civilian community leaders, and my own family members whose pride in my service is now openly expressed rather than hidden behind mutual misunderstanding. The images represent the authentic identity integration that has replaced 3 years of careful deception. My phone contains messages from VA specialists about upcoming cases, military families requesting advocacy assistance, civilian hospital colleagues supporting my community volunteer work, and family members sharing continued amazement about military achievements they never knew existed. The complexity is greater than the simple civilian life I thought I wanted when I left active duty, but the satisfaction is also greater. Using military medical expertise to help people who need it most, building authentic family relationships based on complete honesty, and contributing to community well-being through integrated military and civilian service. The transformation that began with a simple anniversary party invitation has evolved into exactly the kind of meaningful life that justifies 8 years of military service, 3 years of civilian exploration, and the ongoing work of building authentic relationships with the people and communities that matter most. Tomorrow will bring new advocacy cases, family celebrations, community service opportunities, and the continued integration of military expertise with civilian life that has become my permanent identity rather than a temporary transition phase. But tonight ends with the peace that comes from finally living authentically, using capabilities to help people who need them, and maintaining relationships based on truth rather than carefully constructed privacy. The deception has ended, replaced by the complex but honest work of living fully as the person military service shaped me to become while contributing to the civilian community I've chosen to call home. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.